Hey, Emil.
Hey, Roland, how you doing, man?
Pretty good. Trying to figure out how to join. I guess I did it
Roland, how you
good.
doing, man?
Figure out how to join. I guess I did it good. Let me know if you hear any feedback from me.
A little bit, not too much. It's no big deal. I'm
Okay.
gonna close my door. What's going on, man?
Just busy. Busy. We got my computer tech is out today, so it's just me flying solo, having fun.
Oh dear, that could be problematic. Well, we got a couple people. It looks like there's just two of us in the room. Did you have any trouble jumping on? Was it pretty simple?
Once I figured out where to click, it was easy.
Yeah, that's the tough part. Is sometimes it keeps on posting things over and over again, and so like right now I'm looking at the TechSETS page, and it says Google Hangouts on there, but it doesn't say join.
Yeah, that's what I saw. I was able to click on play, and then I saw you, but then until the other one came up where it says, the other one, then I was able to hit Hangout, and then I got it.
Hopefully folks will be able to figure it out too. I think they got to do probably make it a little bit easier to join these Hangouts. I mean, like right now I'm looking at it and it says, TechSETS Hangout developing BYOT policy. And actually, let me try something here. I'm going to try the screen share bit.
Sure.
And so you should be able to see my second screen and in lieu of me in just a second.
Yep.
You see my second screen? See, it says right there, Hangout.
Hangout, yeah, that's the button I didn't see previously. I only saw if you scroll down, it's probably the live view. That's the one I saw.
Yeah.
So the other one I didn't see the Hangout button, this one that you're pointing at, on the top.
And then if you continue to scroll down, you see that there's like 3 other, versions of the Hangout. And it's like, wait, I didn't post any.
Yeah. I only have one. I have the one stream, Hangout developing, whatever, and then I have the TechSETS that says Hangout.
That's cool.
Those are the only 2 I have.
So what's going on, man? What you been up to? It looks like Bob's joining us. Hey, Bob, how you doing?
Hi, good.
Day one.
I got other people talking to me.
That's cool. Hey, Bob, this is Roland. Bob.
How you doing?
Hi, Roland.
Hi, Bob.
Hey, I thought
we'd just pretty well. It's a lot faster than I remember it when we first started.
They're improving it. I think on the back end, the tech side is getting a little bit smoother. It looks like they might be applying some sort of algorithm that's making it easier. Because I remember it too. When I was doing this about 6 months ago, nowhere near as smooth as it is now. But
this is my first one.
Welcome, Bob. These are little informal what's ups. Yeah. We do all these webinars and everything is formal and presentations come on, and we just came to realize that sometimes it's just better to have it open, have people talk.
Yeah.
But what I used to do is just open these up and say, hey, whatever, let's talk about whatever you want. And folks gave me a little bit of feedback saying, hey, maybe it's better to have some sort of a topic to talk about. So
sure.
I think, BYOT policy is a good place to start. You guys, where are you from, Bob?
I'm Davis Joint Unified School District in Davis, California, near Sacramento. I'm going to close my office door here.
Sure. You guys have a BYOD initiative up there?
So we're in the sort of interesting place of where there's a lot of interest in going this direction, but I just don't think that our technology infrastructure is up to it. But I'm more interested at this point in talking and thinking about creating policy in advance of having that capability. So there's a fair amount of energy in that direction. And I think that overall, just sort of the consumerization of technology at school sites, we're going to be there sooner than later.
Yeah, that's been the main feedback. I just did a presentation on BYOT policy development at the SETPA conference. I know Roland went. Were you up there? You were there. Yeah, that was the main issue that everybody brought up. Everybody seemed to have a problem with. We don't have the infrastructure. I heard a really interesting story.
Yeah, we lost you.
I'm still here, but yeah, Emil looks like he's frozen in time.
Yeah,
There
I
you are.
got kicked out of my own. I got kicked out of my own thing, man. What the hell? Hey, I was saying, yeah, the story was Central California District. I want to say Mendota or something like that. And they were saying that they've decided to go. They got this big grant and they bought a bunch of iPads, and they decided to mix up the devices. So so it wasn't really bring your own device initiative as much as it was let's use mobile devices. And the IT guys were so jacked up about doing it, and that they thought it was going to be a wonderful experience. And on the rollout day when they distributed everything to the students, and they had like parent professionals using the devices, and the APs just blew up, because suddenly everybody's on wireless. Everybody's, you're pushing 20, 30 streams through an AP that's supposed to handle 4 rooms in a building or so. And
Yeah.
so things crashed like at 9 a.m.
Wow.
Not the computing, the network was the issue. And so I commend you for thinking about the infrastructure part of it. Everybody keeps focusing on the device part of it. What about you guys, Roland? Are you thinking about BYOT stuff?
We are. We have a bond, and today's a pretty significant day for that. We'll find out if it passes,
Yeah.
along with if we all have jobs tomorrow. But so we'll find out. We do plan in in an ideal world, we like to go with that. If you were set with a what if,
Right.
So we're gonna, if the bond goes through, our plans are to do 3 grade levels of iPads in particular.
Nice.
And just because of not so much the iPads are the most expensive, right? But the reason that we're going there is professional development is there. Much like most people don't like siloed, how Apple silos are, but it's great for security, and you can lock them down, you can manage them, and so that's basically the reason. But if we go that route, because E-rates cut back on priority 2, that infrastructure piece is a big concern.
It is. It's
And
huge.
so I'm not sure what we're going to do as far as that goes. So we'll have to find out. We have one of our schools that's purchasing 200 iPads right now through some different monies that they received. But again, infrastructure is a huge piece of that, and that'll actually be our so-called pilot, I guess, because the hardware's coming, and we'll find we'll find out if it works, and it's only going to go on up from there. So.
Yeah.
So the school in Mendota, the school district in Mendota, what was the classroom to AP ratio that they had?
If I recall correctly, it was a guy I was talking to on the floor. I think it was four classrooms for each access point. I
And
know.
Roland, where are you in terms of wireless?
I have, well, 4 of our schools. We have 11 locations, or 11 schools. 4 of them have an HP solution, wireless, and MDF, IDF switches. So we have the capacity to add, theoretically up to 60 devices per classroom in 4 of our schools. As far as the other ones, I'm using Airport Extremes, so we can hit about, ideally about 30 devices per airport.
Yeah.
And that's 7 of my locations are that way. So I have great concern, because if you talk to Apple, for a business environment, they don't recommend Apple Extremes. They're just not. They're all separate.
Oh, really?
Yeah. They'll be the first ones to tell you that 30 per device or 30 per airport extreme will not suffice, because having said that, all our classrooms in the upper grades especially are over 30 at this point.
Yeah.
So trying to have 2 airports in the same room, and again, ideal situation, when one's full, they'll go on to the other one. It doesn't always work that way, because there's nothing managing them on the back end. So I haven't had any issue with our HPs that we have, but anything else, so we'll see.
How long have you had your HP solution?
3 years, I think, going back 3 years for those 4 locations.
Have you liked it?
And the interface, if you're a geek, is awesome because it's, I mean, you can do all kinds of stuff, command line and everything. Me, I'm more of a GUI kind of guy because we've been a Mac district since '99.
Yeah.
And so it's not as pretty and not as user friendly as I would like.
Okay.
And so if I were to go look at something right now, I'd probably look at there's one that's called I think it's AirWatch. I'm gonna mess up the name.
No, that's the one. AirWatch is the number one business.
And then there's Meraki. Meraki has a fantastic interface if you can pay for it. User friendly is all get out. I mean, drag and drop. Real nice. So
they've got a webinar coming up. Did you hear about that webinar? I'll send it to you if you want. Meraki just announced it. Let me see if I can find it in my email.
And Meraki will actually give you a free login to manage a certain amount, as far as if you're just going to manage your current APs.
Yeah.
And that portion's free, so it's a good way to test it out too. Beautiful interface. I can't say enough about it. I mean, it'll drill down and throw everything on top of Google Maps for you. You can plot out what room the wireless interface is in, especially if you use their stuff.
Yeah.
But it's it's a little on the pricey side, and because we're a school district, I very rarely have money one time, but I will usually never have that same money again.
Yeah.
So I can't rely on a hosted solution for infrastructure.
So what's the spendy part of Meraki, Roland? You're not talking about just the mobile device management suite, right? You're talking about their whole solution?
They have wireless access points.
Oh, okay.
You just take the access point and plug it in, and then you're paying for the use of that. And I can't tell you exactly. They make switches too with the management interface is really what sells it. It's beautiful, it works, it's nice, but it's a reoccurring cost. And with my HP stuff, HP's basically the warranty is lifetime.
Yeah.
I don't know as far as the wireless stuff goes, but on their hardware, it's lifetime. So, if it breaks, I do a repair order and I get a replacement part or a replacement unit.
That's interesting. So my switch infrastructure is primarily HP. We have a technology high school that started out with a Gates grant probably about 7 years ago, and 3 years ago went charter. It's grades 10, 11, 12 with a one-to-one program, and they recently expanded to grades 7, 8, and 9. 7, 8, and 9 isn't quite one-to-one. But for 3 years, they have, well, for a very long time, they've really kind of struggled with getting the throughput that they wanted for their one-to-one program. But they had remained relatively small, and then when they went charter, they expanded their size, moved to a different location, and we just kind of eyeballed what we thought wireless would do for them, and for 3 years, they've really kind of struggled to get what it is that they needed. And it's essentially been a combination of updating the infrastructure so that the switches can pass the bandwidth that they need, as well as increasing the density of the access points. Their junior high school increased in size and went up to 300 students this past year and moved into another facility, so we had to deploy new wireless for them. And we actually did a bit of a spectrum analysis for them and went with one access point per classroom setup, and made sure that we had gig to each of the distribution switches. And so with that setup, we've been very, very pleased and had really good success with it. We're still using, or we started out, when we only needed a couple of access points. This is before I was even here with Cisco, and we've continued to use them. But I imagine that if we ever go with a larger deployment, that the price is going to be a real issue for us. I've been looking at Ruckus, and I have to say that the access points seem to be fairly easy to deploy, and the interface for them was fairly easy to learn as well. But I don't know.
Yeah, I met with them at SETPA. We had like a good 20-minute meeting, and what they did a good job of doing is comparing it to their competitors, comparing their solution to their
Yeah.
competitors, and I couldn't agree with you more. For the first, much lower price, and the technology seemed really interesting, different, frankly.
Yeah.
They've got that. Well, they've got a bunch of things that I was really impressed by. So, Bob, what's as far as policy is concerned for your? I think you said your seventh grade kids. Is that right?
Yeah.
Were you involved? Are you the IT director there, or are you the?
Yeah.
So, were you involved with establishing a policy, or is there even a policy in place, or?
Because it's a charter school, to some extent they operate a little bit independent from the district. They are a dependent charter in terms of finances, and periodically they consult with me on certain kinds of things. But in terms of how their policy, I wasn't involved.
See, that's mind-boggling. Why?
They're part of the New Tech Network. I don't know if you've heard of them, out of Napa. So they were one of the earliest schools from one of the charter New Tech Network schools, and I think Napa was the first, but this school was, I believe, one of the first 10 that. So there's this fairly large network about of schools, and they all kind of excuse me, share their internal information, develop their acceptable use policies, and share them.
Wow, it's national, huh?
Yeah. So our school is Da Vinci Charter Academy, somewhere in the California section there.
Yeah, I see it. Can you guys see my screen?
Yes.
Oh, there we are.
But the expectations for Da Vinci are different than our traditional K-12. And so I was going to sort of go down the road of asking about policy. I mean, there's as we talk about bring your own technology, there's concern about, well, what's this actually going to do for the support load of centralized district technology? Is it going to make it go up? Is it going to make it go down? If we have BYOT for students versus BYOT for faculty and staff, do we have something in place that says how you're going to deal with sensitive data? What is employee responsibility in terms of sensitive data on personal devices? Since you're bringing your own device, does it matter as much what you do with that device and what might be acceptable use for the device itself versus the network? So,
I met with this.
Questions.
I met with the. I went to a presentation on network access control. Cisco's got this new network access control tool, although they're not calling it network access control now. It's called the Identity Service Engine. Or ICE, and of course,
I saw somebody. I saw a brief demo of it at like a tech symposium I went to at a local vendor recently.
Well, their engineering department head was saying how this is what Cisco's doing. Now, mind you, Cisco, right, one of the top 5 tech organizations on the planet. They have stopped help desk support for all of their employees. What they're doing is they're giving each of their employees something like $1,500 or $2,000 and saying, go buy your thing, whatever you want, it's yours.
Yeah.
The caveat is no tech support whatsoever from Cisco, and you're going to have to figure it out on your own. Because they're saying, hey, man, look, it's cheaper for us to buy you a device and just give it to you than it is for us to do this help desk thing. And so what's happening is folks are bringing in their own, machines with all their own personal content on it, and we're a highly regulated industry. As far as industries go, we're up there with healthcare, and we got COPA, we got SIPA, we got FERPA, we got all these things, and I'm not sure that you can even deploy. Personal opinion here, I don't think you can deploy a bring your own technology initiative without both an MDM solution and an ACT solution in place. And yet, again, I'm not at a school district, so I'm not doing this, although we're looking at doing it for the County Office of Education that I work at. My understanding is that most BYOT solutions either have an MDM solution but no NAC solution, or don't have either, and are just kind of figuring it out. Some places are just doing it using Apple Configurator, just turning it into turning this deployment tech, this 1.0 technology, into their mobile device management system. And I'm really surprised. I can justify it if it was just for students, but they're doing it for staff too. And so, what's to say that, like you were saying, Bob, that person puts on their own content on their device and puts on their business content on their device as well, and then decides to quit. Well, now they've got all my business content, or vice versa, so
all my student content.
Or right. So
with the MDM solution, though, if you have an MDM solution that has a profile installed, Absolute, for example, and we have it, but we haven't implemented it. It's just, you're looking at half the IT department right now. So it becomes a challenge to touch all these devices, because you do have to touch every single one to implement it first. But if you put a profile on, I can give you all my content, and I can also remotely delete it as long as I can get to that. Doesn't matter where on the network, whether it's home network, San Francisco, across the earth, whatever. And I pull my profile off, I delete it, and that's it. You don't have to worry about that content that you're talking about.
Yeah,
you do have to have that profile on there.
They call it, I think the industry refers to it as containerization, creating those profiles,
But, what happens, so if that content is there, what happens if you've got a portable device that goes here, there, and everywhere? What happens if, one of my employees left his laptop in the backseat of the car, he went to the gas station, He went inside to pay for his gas, didn't lock his car while he was going inside to do this, came out, laptop's gone.
Right.
You can delete that profile as long as you can get to it on the network, or the next time it hits the network, it falls home, and that profile is gone. So hopefully, if that laptop is closed, when somebody opens it up, there's a login, and it's going to hit the network, arbitrarily. And as soon as it sees that, hey, I'm supposed to delete that profile, it wipes out. So that's one way of controlling that issue.
So I think the solution that you're discussing, Roland, is obviously the way to go. That's really the whole MDM industry. But now, what are your thoughts about what happens when we move into a bring your own device situation, where it's not the organization that's distributed the device, or even if it is the organization that's distributed the device, you've created a profile on an employee's device. But what about a student's device? A parent brings in, buys the kid a new Zoom 2 tablet. Are we expected to then have each of the kids log into the MDM Solutions website and sign on and create that profile? Is that generally what the practice would be? Is that
what I've seen out there basically is, if you want to get on my network, here's the profile for you to install, and that comes with all the restrictions. You can take that profile off, and you'll lose all my data, and then you can continue to use the device however you wish. So the problem here is maintaining a personal and business profile on these single-user devices that were never meant to have that.
Right.
And I don't have a solution for that. That's why we're going to go with the iPad solution, and then we're going to recommend that the parents, here, we're going to loan your kids this to use at school, and we're going to recommend that you purchase this device on your own in like 2 years, and whatever that device looks like. So how practical that is, because I was just witnessing or just saw an online legal, advice type of webinar, where, being a school district, we really can't force a parent. We can't say, we're a free public entity, so we can't say, you need to buy this. So then you have to deal with, the parents that say, well, I'm not going to buy that. You have to provide it for my child.
Oh, see, this is fascinating. I had no idea, Roland, because that's what my getting back to the topic of policy development, my thinking was that when an IT division or a tech director is developing a BYOT policy, that they would in fact be able to say, hey, look, based on this rationale, students may not bring a device that's 4G enabled, or students may only bring devices that can run Flash because a large portion of the instructional program uses the Flash content. But you're saying from a legal standpoint,
if you're requiring something specific, you have to provide it.
Huh.
So, as far as, this is different. I'm talking K-12. Now, you can do whatever you want in university, but for K-12, if I'm requiring something, I have to provide it. I cannot force the parent to pay a dime. So, for uniforms, for everything like that, if you want to go by the letter of the law, you can't require it. I'm not sure with charters. I'm sure they're a little different, and you can have a little bit more flexibility there. But I can't tell a parent, you know what, you need to go buy this device. I can highly recommend it. I can say, you need to donate. That's why you have some places that say, it's a donation. If they refuse to pay, there's nothing you can do. They basically get free product. It's a donation.
So the law basically says we can exclude devices, but we can't mandate the inclusion of particular devices.
Yes.
I think that's right.
Yep.
I'm sorry, I had no idea. Well, I'm glad I joined this. But honestly, I've been talking about, hey, guys out there, why don't you, when you're creating your policy, determine what your needs are and, express that in the policy that says, hey, look, you can't have Android-based devices or you can't have iPad-based devices because our MDM, for example, like JAMF, I think San Diego Unified, and I may be wrong about this, may not be accurate, but I think San Diego Unified is going with the JAMF solution. I don't know. JAMF is, it's like a product from some organization. It's a large.
The first one that supported Apple, or that was the Apple recommended solution.
Right.
I'm not sure what it is now, but
yeah, it's the Casper suite, and JAMF is like part of the Casper suite. But
that's JAMF.
It's a mobile device management tool. It's comprehensive management for the iPad, but it's specifically for the Apple platform. And so, I guess the difference there, though, I get it now. I get it. The difference there is that that's not a BYOT program. They're giving the iPads to the kids. So.
Yep.
What would be? Do you have any sense for what the cost comparison between doing like virtual desktops or like a stoneware solution or essentially a virtual desktop on portable devices? What the cost comparison of that versus mobile device management might be?
Numbers.
Roland, I don't have any numbers on that, but in essence, you hit on something, and that's how, like, Long Beach, I believe, if I'm not misspeaking, is Long Beach Unified is going to handle that, because if you have a stoneware type solution, which is fairly pricey, if I'm not mistaken, that's the way to handle bring your own device, because now you're logging into, you don't have to, I'll give you guest access, and you are authenticating, you are doing everything through the stoneware portal, and that's how you access. So I really don't care if it's an iPad, if it's a Chromebook, if it's this and that, because all your network connectivity is being authenticated through that stoneware portal. You're saving all your documents to whatever solution you're using in the cloud, and you don't have to, nothing has to live on your computer.
The problem, Roland, is you're absolutely right. And again, another thing I didn't think about. I mean, and we even have stoneware here at the office. But the problem is that, especially the latest release, I think it's Stoneware 7 or something like that. It resolves differently on different devices. I mean, if I pull it up on my Android device, it's a mess. It barely works on my iPad device, but maybe they're just a better solution than stoneware. I think what you're talking about, though, is to have some sort of an internal cloud system set up so that you can deal with all.
I don't know how the information is going to get handled. Like Bob said, so I download all this information from there, because obviously you'd have a different login for an employee as opposed to a student, and so that doesn't answer what do I do with all that confidential information that I might be able to access. Because now I don't have a profile. Now I'm only accessing this, this portal. But I can still take that. It's like music. I can still see all this stuff on this portal and just download it, and now it's mine. And there's no DRM on Windows documents or Google documents. So it's really squishy. I think it's almost as squishy as the new Common Core and SBAC assessments and whatever. If I go on record saying that, not good, bad, or otherwise, it's still squishy. We're kind of building the plane in the air, if you will.
So let me get your thoughts on this, and Bob, I'd love to know what your thinking is too. So, what about you can bring your own device, and I'll give you guest access. But how are you in your investigation, Roland and Bob, and you're looking at this? How important is network access control appliances, or even a VM?
For me, it's really important. I think for a couple of years, I've actually kind of been looking at it, and the difficult nut to crack is, do you do port level network access control, or do you do some sort of device level authentication that's just, if you put in the right password, you go here, but if you're a really geeky person, you really could probably circumvent it. I went to there are two outfits that have kind of been talking to us. This conversation was more intense about a year ago, and one of them was more of a portal-based. And I went and talked to the network folks at Sac State in Sacramento, where they had sort of done both. And they said the problem with port-based stuff is, particularly if you get people who come onto your campus with Unix or Linux-like operating systems, those operating systems, so generally a port-based control operates on, I'll give you a temporary address, and then when I figure out who you are, I'm going to release that address and give you an address that's appropriate for your role, or who, whether you're an authenticated device. But these particular devices don't like to give up their address before the lease is over. So is that going to then end up creating, a tech support load for you? What kind of, particularly at secondary, what kind of devices would you expect to come on? Is it only going to be Macs and PCs with some tablet-type devices, or would we end up seeing, some of our more technically oriented folks coming in with all sorts of Linux distributions on laptops and stuff like that?
What are you leaning towards? Are you leaning more towards?
I think I'm leaning towards something that's simpler and probably is maybe some sort of combination of MAC filtering and user authentication based on a network.
Gotcha.
Or maybe something that is somehow aware of, oh, this device belongs to Active Directory, so it must be an approved device, so I'll give you this, and for everything else, it's... or maybe it will be something that's completely taken care of by whatever wireless solution we end up coming up with, so that if you can get on the guest network. So the wireless that we have right now doesn't use a password that you enter. It actually, for our staff, functions by an SSL key that's pushed out through Active Directory. So there's nothing that we share for people to be able to get onto that network. So for those managed devices, they'll be able to get onto a wireless VLAN or a wireless network that has access to internal resources. And then the other guest network will probably just be open, or a password that's widely distributed, and they're not really going to have access to many internal resources, and that will be a sort of a form of NAC.
I see. What about you?
Shut up, Roland. You tell me.
What's your thinking?
What you're thinking?
Yeah, it's really difficult to find out to kind of pigeonhole something like that, because we're still fighting the, do we open up YouTube, Facebook, and all that stuff and still maintain SIPA compliance, or do we maintain locking it down? And unfortunately, I think the way the industry's going and everything's going is we're going to start being system admins and parents and everything. We have challenges with this, but we're basically going to start relinquishing all this control. And so I think what's going to end up happening is we're going to have some sort of free network, like you said, like, hey, come to school. Go ahead and, like some hotels provide, come to school and say, I agree to abide by your rules, whatever, just as a kind of disclaimer. And then you can jump on without any problem. And then, like Bob said, I think for those employees, like we do for our wireless right now, we don't have an open network just because of our infrastructure. and I only authenticate through MAC addresses. So we don't have an Active Directory system. We've been Mac-based since 1999. I'm trying to go Open Directory, but it's a challenge with all the different forms of hardware and everything.
Yeah.
So we filter on MAC address, and yes, you can replicate it, but we don't have any high schools. So fortunately, my kids are not eager enough to hack stuff yet. They do that at the high school level, thankfully. And so I have Mac-based authentication, and that's a challenge because if we have visitors or something like that, then it has to, we're a one-stop shop. You tell me about them or you don't get on the network. But at the same time, you can plug in a wire, because I don't have any NAC that way. But I think that tool level is going to be the solution. And, give them free access. It all goes back to policy. Kelly Calhoun at Santa Clara, and this, Emil, too, is working on that. You may know of her as well.
I haven't gotten any updates from her, though, on anything lately. I mean,
I have that website that she put out that I haven't looked at in a while that tells you all the information, and I think that's still in the progress. But they're basically stating, Bob, if you're not familiar, is bullying is really the same as cyberbullying. It's just in a different form.
Yeah.
And, if you're truant or you're doing something bad, it's basically, and you're doing that through a computer or electronic device, it's the same as doing it in person. It's just the tool that you're using is different.
Right.
And you can it's a lot quicker, a lot more severe. So anyway, having said that, that's what I'm doing right now is I basically grabbed Hawthorne's policies, and the school district that's doing the bring your own device successfully, I don't know to what extent, but they're doing it and have been doing it, is Riverside Unified. So, and they're
national coverage on that, man. I don't know if you've seen it, but they're all over the news about what they're doing there. And it's interesting, Roland. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. Just a quick thought is that, they've partnered up with the municipality there.
Yep, city.
Just brilliant stuff. And we see Rick Williams, I think, is the superintendent going around talking about that. And they've made all their policies available as well for folks. It's just that they're so unorthodox.
I don't know how they're not getting killed by some legal ramifications or something, but they're doing something right because it's working, and they basically said, bring whatever you got, we'll try and help you accommodate. And I believe they're using that portal scenario.
Yeah.
And they'll let you on the network, and as long as you abide by their rules, you don't abide by their rules, they boot you off and you're done.
Right.
So.
Hey, check this out. One of the viewers who is viewing this but not joining this Hangout on air, a guy named Eric Eisenman from the U.S. Department of Defense Education Activity, made an interesting comment in the comment box. It says, I suggest that the topic of bandwidth throttling and whether teachers be empowered to moderate or throttle specific device bandwidths be seriously addressed, especially within networks already having limited low bandwidth issues. Any thoughts about that? I didn't.
Well, we will probably end up, once we implement a guest network, do some QoS where some sort of network bandwidth throttling will be implemented for certain protocols or certain kinds of traffic. I'm not sure how we could effectively give teachers the ability to do that. I don't know. My own personal experience with most classroom teachers is that they're that would probably be a step beyond most of their capabilities.
I would agree.
Go ahead.
I'm sorry, Bob. I would agree. I think that's an excellent idea, but they're so busy right now with their curriculum, their classroom management, and all the things that are put onto them. My thing is always, I don't want to add one more thing to their plate. I want them to use technology in place of, the book, not in addition to, because it's no longer, I'm trying to get that mentality out of people's heads is, this is not a reward. So you don't do your report and then you get to play with your iPad. Right. Or we're not going to take Friday and go to the computer lab so you can play.
Yeah.
So we want to make it so ubiquitous that if we take the technology out, you can no longer perform your teaching duties, in the classroom. Now, what that'll do to the technology department is a completely different issue because now we'll have, 5-minute response times required instead of, 24 hours or 4 hours or whatever. But that's the issue. Although I do think throttling is a good idea because, during Christmas time, it's amazing how many people are listening to Christmas music online.
Right.
And you want to throttle that video, YouTube watching that video. And with my new firewall, we will have that ability. So we're not going to dismantle it, because I don't like telling anybody no. I'm not the no guy. I'm the let me see if I can make that work guy. But
Yeah.
at the same time, I don't want 150 people at one location streaming Pandora or streaming radio or something when there's actual classroom, stuff going on. So
Yeah.
during specific hours, if it was up to me, I would limit, anything that's not educationally related. Now that's a huge, try and figure out what's not educationally related, right? Because there's a lot of YouTube videos, a lot of Khan Academy, a lot of videos that are related. But I think that's a good point. You should be able to throttle certain applications or certain streaming modes during
Just
classroom
not
time.
at that granular level of control.
Yeah, I honestly don't think. Well, I agree with Bob. I don't think that'll work at a teacher level, because they're too busy.
So how are you doing it now? I'm sorry, Bob. Go ahead.
I was going to circle back to the acceptable use policy thing, but go ahead if.
Well, I
if
was just wondering, how are you fellas handling? Well, what kind of speeds are you getting as far as your ISP is concerned? Are you guys getting a gigabit? Are you getting what kind of a pipe do you have coming into your system?
Specifically for me, I've got gig going from site to site, and I only have a 30 meg pipe going out to the internet, which I hope to increase as early as next July to a minimum 100, maximum 500 meg. So,
how many schools are you looking at?
I've got 12 schools, but 15 locations.
Wow, 30 megs, huh?
Yep.
So I have 15 school or 17 schools, 15 locations, something like that. I have a gig between the schools. I supposedly have 100 meg OptiMan to the county office, but I really only get about 30 meg throughput.
Wow.
And I'm unclear whether where things are falling down.
Well, I'll tell you, we get those kinds of. We're an ISP as well here in San Diego, and we get those kinds of, for lack of a better term, not to be disrespectful, complaints as well from certain districts, and it's almost always come down to, it's not what we're providing, it's just that your network is configured so poorly. And I'm not saying yours is, Bob, but
right.
The school district just doesn't have their network configured, so they're getting bottlenecked at some place. And
Right.
one of the things I'm working on, and I think I mentioned this to you, Roland, a while back, is I'm working on coming up with a way to provide California's school districts a one-time, free of charge network analysis service, where we can just either send you an appliance, or we can even just do it through some sort of a VM solution to check your network out and figure out, hey, the reason you're only getting 30 meg throughput is because of X, Y, and Z. And
I went around your office today to pick one of those up.
I was going to say, and just an FYI, the 30 meg is actually like from my office, which is right next door to the core switch that goes directly to the county.
Wow.
I know that if I tested that from a school, depending upon what school it is, I could easily see less than that.
Yeah.
I know that my infrastructure is aged, that I actually paid for a network analysis this past summer, and the report out has, tells me what I already knew, but simply documented that I have switches that are 10 to 15 years old, that are beyond lifetime from the vendor, that simply aren't capable of doing QoS, or aren't capable of doing some of the things that I need them to do. And, I have a lot of ports that are still stuck at 10100 instead of gig at the core level. So,
how about, I'm sorry.
I was just going to say, infrastructure is going to be a big deal, especially while adding all of these new wireless devices and adding, the Common Core, the testing and all that. Infrastructure is a huge deal because, like Emil said, we can add all these devices, but we're going to bottleneck somewhere. And the other thing that you don't want to do is you don't want to put all this technology into teachers' hands and have it not work, because it's going to be living in the corner with the spider webs and everything, because again, they don't have time to deal with it. So if it doesn't work, it's not going to, you're not going to find an easy way of making it work. You know,
Yeah, our network manager here at the county mentioned an interesting scenario that, again, not being an expert in network stuff, I hadn't thought about, is that, sometimes folks have such old APs, like, we were just hearing from Bob, is that the control intelligence is not in the AP, it's at the central network level, and so you don't recognize how badly stuff is getting caught up, or your network gets overloaded because the APs just let everything go through and hits the network. Hey, how do you fellas? What's your thinking about? So not about students, right? Getting back to the BYOT policy concept, is employees bringing in rogue tools and devices into a system. So far I've heard. I think I tuned out for a second, but neither of you have a NAC solution in place.
Correct.
Correct.
So what happens when Joe Bob says I'm going to bring in my own thing and and I got a bunch of malware on it, or in some cases I've even heard about some places where they bring in their own MiFi devices, so they're basically bringing in their little own personal area network. What's your thinking about policy as far as that's concerned? Do you think? I mean, I'm willing to bet every policy out there basically says you can't do it, or maybe I'm wrong. What do you think?
Go first, Roland.
Okay. For my deal, that's one of the things that's going to be addressed in policy, and depending on which way we go, we'll find out. Bottom line is, if you address it in policy and say, set up the parameters of what people are able to do and not supposed to do, I'm not sure that's a bad thing. You bring in your own MiFi, let's say, and you're accessing the curriculum by signing into the portal or whatnot. Hey, use whatever means possible. That's almost like you're at home.
Right.
And I'm not sure we can control that. That's the problem that I've seen at the high school districts is, what do they tell you? Okay, kids, put away all your devices, put away all your cell phones, do this, do that, or that's blocked. I actually heard this story from somebody in particular. And the student ran up there with his iPhone and said, "Oh, well, let me show it to you. It's right here," because the teacher's, was blocked from that specific site. And that's one extreme. Or the other extreme is the school district blocks Facebook, and there's some kind of, threat or something happening on Facebook. They can't access that, and so they'll go on their iPhone to access that. So I think it has to be addressed in just proper behavior online. And I don't know that you could stop it, and I don't know that we have the resources to be able to stop it or curtail it.
Well, with the NAC you could, right? I mean, if you had some sort of a service engine that would say, hey, look, I need to identify your device, and incidentally, now that I've authenticated your personal device because you've allowed me, or you want access to my network, I know exactly what you're doing, and I'm going to be able to control everything that you do. Now, unless you're, I guess, going through a cellular system. I mean, am I missing something here? If you had a NAC in place,
that'll work. The problem then is you go back to the resources. Like, okay, let's say that, like, right now my coworker is out sick and I'm the only one here. So somebody calls me and needs something, like, right now. I need to get on the network, or my device is not working on the network because of the NAC. Now you have to have some kind of resource in place that will mitigate that problem. So we're still back to a resource issue.
Good point.
Because the more control you want, the more resources you need to control it. So I don't know. I don't think there's a proper answer unless Bob knows something.
No. I think it really does come down to resources and what's reasonable. I mean, if you want to, there are ways to control almost anything. The question is, how much effort do you want to put into that? And although we do have sensitive data, we're not a defense contractor. We don't have credit card numbers, or health information, personal information of that nature. Maybe that doesn't even matter.
Yeah.
I guess I think of what you're talking about more as a filtering solution than a NAC solution. I think of NAC as a way of segregating your network so that you have known, trusted devices having access to systems that generally are only accessed in a way that is done in a secure environment. Like, for instance, Windows SMB shares. Windows SMB is a classically insecure mode of accessing things. There are ways to leak information. There are easy ways to compromise systems. So in general, you don't do that unless you're in an environment that you have control over. Well, at the point that you introduce unmanaged devices into your environment, then you need to think about delivering services in a different way from an unsecured network.
Wow.
And to me, network access control allows me to determine, are you a device or a person who belongs on a secured network or a completely open unsecured network? And then I deal with the, can you get access to Facebook, can you get access to this, or can you get access to that, as long as we're talking essentially about web resources through a web filter.
Right, right. You know, there's also the academic side of this discussion that we haven't really gotten too deep into, but I'd love to hear what your opinions are about this. You know, well, just real quick as a side note, you know, one of the resources that TechSETS offers is a breakdown of the critical capabilities of MDM. If you're interested in that, I'd be happy to email that to you directly. It's a study, it's a comprehensive study that Gartner did.
Okay.
With you know, they did an analysis of all the top 20 MDM providers out there, including AirWatch and FiberLink and Good Enterprises and Zenprise and Our Good Technologies. And so I'd be happy to send that to you if you're interested, if you want to take a look at that. But one of the things that is, to me at least, really important is that IT directors like yourselves be intimately involved with the development of these BYOT policies, at least to some degree. You know, not like, you know, final cut approval or anything like that, but at least have some input, because some of the feedback that I'm getting is actually coming from teachers. And I'm, you know, I read about this stuff on Twitter, and sometimes I get direct emails, but you know, a school district comes up with this wonderful idea to save money. Of course, they realize later that they're not saving anything. In any case, there's actually an upfront cost that you have to pay by going into these BYOT programs. But what they're not recognizing sometimes is that the toll that puts on the teachers is sometimes more challenging than not. And this is specifically what I'm talking about is so I'm a teacher, and I've been teaching, you know, in the traditional classroom setting for however many years I've been teaching, and now I have to make that transition into using technology and so forth. And now all the kids are bringing BYOT tools into the system, but now that I've actually transferred my instructional program to be more digital, I still have to maintain an analog version of my curriculum for the kids that don't have those tools to bring into the system. And I think generally speaking, they refer to those two approaches as passive permission approach and active design approach. So when you approach BYOT from an active design perspective, you're basically saying that everybody's going to have a device to work with, and if you can't bring your own, certainly we'll provide you with one. That would be the active version. The other version is, which is much more prevalent in California, is a passive permission version, which is, hey, if you got it, use it. If you don't have it, no worries, because we've got the analog version. And then going back to what I meant by the toll on the teacher is, that's basically two versions of the same instructional unit that they have to maintain. In essence, you double their creation workload. And I'm wondering if that resonates with you at all, and what your thoughts would be on this.
Yeah.
Have you been involved with any kinds of discussions with, as far as professional development for teachers are concerned, when it comes to using mobile devices? And
no, you know, I'll just say that the direction that and this kind of harkens back to the rogue device question as well. In some interesting ways, there's a connection. The direction that our school district is going is to move those and in some ways, I agree with part of this, in that I really do think that that conversation really belongs more in the instructional services realm. I mean, could I have something to add to that? I suppose, but I guess I'm hoping that that particular point is going to come up from teachers, because I have a sense that it will be more meaningful if teachers recognize that that is going to be what's coming along. I'm so at some level, I think people in my position, it probably depends upon what school district you're in. As technology has become more complex, we've been sort of, and probably also depends on the size of your organization as well, been pigeonholed more into directly dealing with technology things and solving technology problems rather than solving instructional problems. I think that there is something lost in that, but at the same time, unless ownership of some of those technology things can come directly from instructional leaders rather than technology leaders, I don't know that we'll make the kind of progress that we need to make in instruction.
That's interesting. What's your thinking, Roland? Are you finding now that you're in that director position that you're being pulled in more into instructional discussions, or what's the haps?
Yes and no. I mean, I'm still asked to make it work. So if that means making it pulled in, then yes. I'm still going back to the fact that I don't know that if you have a curriculum that you can offer, that you're telling these kids that you're teaching one set of kids one way and you're offering the analog version, the paper or whatnot, I don't know that that's possible for us. I think that if I have a curriculum that uses the iPad and Storyboard or whatever program I'm using, that if the kid doesn't have it, there is no analog version, and I have to provide it for them. I don't know, and I don't know that you can convince the teachers unions that that we're going to have to come up with two curriculums, one electronic, and one not, to be able to teach the same class.
I also think that I'm sorry, Roland. I didn't mean
go ahead. No, that's fine.
I also think that there is an issue of equity, and that if there is a unique value to using technology as an instructional tool, that if there is some value added to using technology, that to fall back to an analog version, if there really is no added value to technology, then why are we spending all the money? But if there is, then it really speaks to an issue of equity if I'm willing to provide that less than option for some students.
Yeah, you're right, Bob. I mean, just about every research study that I've come across suggests that the way to make these tech initiatives, specifically with mobile devices, work is to align them to some sort of an academic purpose.
Yeah.
And I don't know, I just feel like it's a shame to, yeah, maybe we're not all credentialed teachers or anything like that, but we are running tech divisions, and we know a thing or two about technology, not just because we know how to make it work. And I agree with you, Roland. I think unfortunately that's how we're pretty much seen now, is the guys who make it run when it doesn't run. But we're users of this stuff too, and we know its capabilities. And I think more and more the trend that I'm noticing is that tech departments are being asked to associate more with curriculum and instruction departments to figure out how do we best come up with a way to train these teachers, and I guess more importantly the students, to not just use this stuff responsibly, but to actually use it in the first place to learn stuff. And so I think what I'm going to do, and I got to kick this around a little bit, is I'd like to do a survey of some folk, just a voluntary survey of this all or nothing programs, like what Roland is talking about. We're either going to do it or we're not going to do it, versus we'll do it if you've got it, and if you don't have it, well, we'll just maintain it. Because I know that there are informal BYOT programs that are going on right now. It's just a matter of, I'd like to find out what the ratio is, and because I'm kind of along the same lines of Roland. If you're going to do it, you're going to do it, right? If you're going to do blended learning, for example, if you're going to go to that online, if you're going to go to the world of learning management systems, well, then you just do it. You don't create both. But right. I know that there are a lot of school districts that just either haven't made the commitment or don't have the resources, just have the great ideas, and are trying that kind of a one foot in the digital world and one foot in the analog world.
Going back to resources, we always have the professional development issue, is because we don't have those resources, we're 9 times out of 10 putting that cart before the horse, and we get the hardware, and then we kind of push along the training.
Yeah.
And I'm not sure how to rectify that either, because of the deadlines on grants. It's like, okay, if you want this equipment, you need to buy it now.
Yeah.
And so, we're not going to say no. And then we're relegated to, okay, now I have this iPad, now train me how to use it. Well, at that point, it becomes difficult finding the time because now you're talking in addition to. You
Yeah.
haven't created the need, the want.
Oh, it's
So,
horrible, man. Before I was in technology, I was in curriculum instruction, and right before I left the school district I was working at to move into a county office level position, I had a lump sum of cash that I had to spend in like 2 days, and I just didn't have the resources to be able to build consensus on what it is that we're going to buy. And so I made some purchases based on my best knowledge. And of course, months later, it got back to me that folks were all up in an uproar because I bought all this great stuff that nobody wanted. And it's like, well, I could have thrown the money away, but yeah, I think it's definitely a challenge. Hey, fellas, thank you so much for your time. And
Can I just chime in real quick?
Yeah, sure.
So I guess I think I've seen so many situations of where we've bought technology and even provided training on how to use the device. But what's missing, I think, is that many times, particularly people of my age, may know how to use the device or may know how to do a few things that they've been trained how to do, but there's just still that disconnect of, well, how do I incorporate that into an instructional setting? How do I really make this a learning tool? How do I move to giving access to students for this? How do I, and that's a whole area that I feel completely unqualified in leading in. And I think to some extent that's the area that people are recognizing that folks in my position, unless I've been in the classroom, just oftentimes don't have what it takes to be able to lead in that direction.
That's
anyway.
No, that's. I think you're right. I think that's the general perception, and maybe to a certain degree there is some accuracy to that. But I found in my life, personal life, that the best decisions that I've made have been based on input from a diverse group of folks. Whether or not they've been an expert in the field that I'm trying to make a decision in or not. Actually, just to offer this personal reflection up, if sometimes the best decisions I've made have been informed by people who are not experts in the particular field that I'm trying to make a decision in. And sometimes I make a decision based on what just people with expert opinions have given me, and my decision is just whack, it's totally off or totally conventional and doesn't really garner my end result for me. So if I were king of your school district, your charter school there, Bob, you'd be in on all of my meetings, man. Because just who knows, I'm sure. So you haven't stood in front of a bunch of kids and taught a lesson. I mean, you've got a lot of other insight that you might be able to lend that might make somebody at the CTO level or something make a decision. I mean, does that make sense? What do you think, Roland? Does that?
I agree. I think there's a great book. It's a nice bathtub book. You can probably read it in a couple hours. Called "It's Not About the Coffee," written by the guy from Starbucks.
Okay.
And awesome book. I think it's really simple. And bottom of the line, what I got out of it was you got to ask the guy that's pushing the broom what broom to buy. And that's not done often enough. I mean, you could buy this awesome computer, this awesome, tablet, and if the teacher is used to their Android device or is happy with their, 5-year-old computer, then it's our job to make that work. Exactly, there it is. Very good book. Not really leadership, not really whatever, but it'll give you a really good idea of why Starbucks is as successful as they are, and how he went about doing it. And I have a firsthand experience on a maintenance department that purchased these awesome vacuum cleaners that worked better. They were less expensive. They were easier to maintain. Nobody used them because they didn't like them. They could have spent like $10 more on a different brand that everybody liked and everybody would use, and they would have had less trouble in the long run if they just said, hey, what kind do you guys want to use? Or, get some input. And so that's why, like Emil said, if you're going to do something, involve everybody, And the first part is you got to be a salesman, and we're not used to that, but you got to sell the idea, and that's why the PD is so important to have, first, because during that PD, somebody's inevitably going to say, well, hey, does it, I know it does photos, I know it does this, I know it does this, but, can I read my daughter's kindergarten book on there or whatever? And that's really why I'm buying it. The fact that it does all this other stuff is awesome.
Right.
But, I really needed to work on this math program that just shows kids 2 + 2 is 4, and I'll use it. And if you can sell it that way, you've got it done.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I don't know about you. I think you're both compelling fellas, and I'm glad we met, Bob, and I'm hoping that you'll join us again. I try to do this once a month, and and as you can see, it's just kind of let's just talk, and it's not really a presentation or anything like that. And if you know other folks in your division or in your knowledge or your social sphere, please let them know about it, and I'll post these up online. And remember, this whole thing is on YouTube, so I'll send you the link for it too if you're interested.
Great.
Nice to meet you, fellas. Have a great day.
I'll tell everybody that. Okay. Thanks, Emil. Take care.